If you would have told my 19-year-old self that one day I would leave Germany behind to move to Australia, I would have laughed. Australia wasn't even on my bucket list, but after 10 years, 3 trips, a global pandemic, and one decision that changed everything, I'm finally making Australia my home. So in this video, I want to tell you exactly how I got here and why I decided to leave everything behind. Hello and welcome back to a new video. I'm Sarah, I'm from Germany and I've been living in Australia for the past 3.5 years. And this year everything is going to get a little bit more serious. So for my story, I have to go back in time, back to 2015, when I decided to fly to New Zealand by myself. I always wanted to see New Zealand. I've seen so many pictures and videos of it. It just looked gorgeous and picturesque, and I always wanted to travel very far away from my home, and New Zealand was the one that was the furthest away, basically. So I booked a ticket and flew to New Zealand, and I wanted to stay for 9 months doing a working holiday visa. I found a friend in New Zealand while I was there, so we traveled a lot together, and New Zealand has shown me a lot of things. I've changed a lot as a person. I've talked to many people, and these people told me I have to go to Australia. I obviously heard about Australia before. It's a massive continent, a country, an island at the same time. And I never really had an idea about Australia. It was just not really on my bucket list. I always wanted to go to New Zealand because that was the country with massive mountains and hiking and lakes. They just had everything, it seemed like. But these people said, you have to go to Australia, trust me. So said and done, I've booked a flight to Australia for 6 weeks. So in April 2016, I first set foot on Australia. I was very sick at that time because I was in Fiji before and I got very sick. I had to go to an hospital, and when I arrived in Australia, I literally couldn't do much in the first 2 weeks because I had trouble breathing, and just in general walking around was the most exhausting thing that I've ever done in my life. And so I was a bit tied to the hostel. But as soon as I could walk a little bit again, I went outside because it was in Sydney. So I went into the city and just explored it a little bit. And something happened that I did not expect it. I immediately fell in love with this country. And as I said, I did not expect that. I thought Australia is a great country, but this feeling that I had being in this country is so hard to put into words. But I felt like such a strong pull towards being here, and I felt like I found a place where I belonged. I've never experienced that in my life before. As I said, I love New Zealand, but I never even really had a thought about living there. It was more like traveling and exploring, but I've never saw myself living there. But as soon as I set a foot on Australia and I just explored a tiny little bit of the continent, I felt like I was where I had to be. And I'm not making this up. This is how I felt. I was 20 years old, no experience, naive. I had no idea what to expect from life. I didn't even had a life yet in Germany, right? I mean, you're 20 years old. And I had no idea what happened to me. I couldn't put it into words. I couldn't talk with anyone about it. I didn't know anyone that felt the same way. And I had to ask myself, do I actually want to maybe live in Australia, or do I just want to explore it further? I had to find the reason why I felt like that. So, after a few weeks, I felt better. So I went traveling to Cairns and then down to Melbourne and back to Sydney, and from there back to New Zealand. And I left with empty pockets, but with a feeling that I couldn't shake. It was time to fly back home and live a normal life, whatever that means. And over the next few years, I just tried to move on. I just tried to live a normal life like everybody else, get a job, get an apartment, study for work, just exist. The only problem was it didn't work. I could never not think about Australia. I just couldn't get it off my mind. I just wanted to come back so desperately. I really had to ask myself the question, if I just wanted to escape reality, or is this actually where I have to be? And by the time I was 23, I just had enough of thinking what could be. I needed an answer to all of my questions. So I took unpaid leave from my work for 8 weeks for October and November 2019. And my plan was to travel along the west coast. I was aware of the fact that WA is very rough and rugged compared to the east coast, but I had no idea how different it would be. But I went anyways. So I started in Perth, went up the coast to Darwin, to Alice, down to Adelaide to see some friends that I made along the way. And while I was there, I just felt like this is where I have to be. This is the country I love so much. I feel like I'm home, even though my home obviously is Germany and will always be. But I had so many thoughts going through my head while I was there. And I constantly asked myself, is this where I want to be? I mean, am I really the person that wants to move to the other side of the world? Isn't that what just other people are doing, but not me? I was just not confident enough to be one of these people. I just thought, why me? Why would I do that? That's just other people, not me. Honestly, the rugged beauty of WA was like a drug to me. I was just looking out of the window while I traveled with the bus along the coast, and I was like, this is the most insane scenery I've ever seen in my life. And I've been to a few places while I was in Germany. I did short-term holidays and everything. I've seen a few things, but I've never seen anything like that. And it just absolutely took my breath away. I remember making a friend up in Broome. We're still friends to this day. He's from Germany and he traveled the world for 3 years. And I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. And I said to him, I really want to do this as well. I'm ready to sell my belongings when I come back to Germany. I'm ready to quit my job. I just want to go. So it was time to go back home and leave this beautiful country. But in my mind, I was like, yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to come back. I'm going to do work and travel. This is my time. So I was back home for a few weeks and then something happened I could have never imagined. COVID. The world shut down and so did I. My dream of traveling Australia was on hold. And COVID not only took my job, it only took my hobbies and my trust in the government, and it completely mentally drained me. It was definitely the roughest time I ever went through in my life mentally, and I was really, really struggling during that time. If something is taken away from you that is out of your control, it felt like nothing was left. Like my hobbies, which is going to the gym, being outside, seeing friends, going traveling, all these things were taken away. You weren't allowed to do them in Germany, and we had very strict lockdowns. And it was very, very hard. But I told myself, when this is over, I'm going straight to Australia. I don't care. As soon as they open the borders, I want to be the one that's knocking on the door and be like, let me in. So over the years, I put up pictures of Australia in my apartment to remind me that one day I will make it. And they always reminded me how beautiful the country is and that there's a place outside of Germany where I can always go one day and I'll feel like I'm home as well. You know, so the years passed, I studied again, I've worked full time, I started my own little business as a personal trainer, and I basically tried again to forget about Australia a little bit so I could just keep going and just live a life, you know? And it felt like the longest 3 years of my life. But when I was 26, it looked like the borders will reopen and I just quit everything and left. So in October 2022, I applied for the working holiday visa. I gave notice of my apartment, and in December 2023, I quit my job and gave up my freelance personal training business and told my friends and family. Massive shock for them, but they already knew that I sort of always wanted to do that. So I guess they just had to deal with my decision that I already made without telling anyone. So for a few weeks, I moved back to my parents after I got rid of all of my belongings in my apartment. And in January 2023, it was finally time to board the plane and come to Australia. And let me tell you, I was very scared, but I just had this feeling inside of me that told me this is the right thing to do. But you know, you always have people that will ask you, but what if? And I kept telling them, if I don't like it, then I just come back home. I mean, I can always get an apartment again, I can always get a job again and just live my old life again. Even now, it doesn't matter, I can just go back, you know. But this life is not something I can possibly do my whole life. So I just wanted to try it. And even if I had to come back after 3 months and tell everyone, look, it's not for me, then that's fine. At least I can mentally tick it off and be like done with it, if that makes sense, and to not think about it anymore. But I knew for myself that that is not going to happen. But that's what I told people, just so they shut up. And exactly what I thought would happen happened. I felt where I belonged. I felt comfortable. I felt like this is where I want to be and spend at least a few years of my life and actually living here and just go back in a few years. I also started documenting my journey on YouTube 3 years ago. So if you're interested in that, you can scroll back. It's in German, but it's all translated into English. If you're interested in that, I traveled a lot in the first year and I just did what I always wanted to do, explore the country. And I've did my farm work as well, so I could stay longer. So I did 88 days of farm work in my first year and 179 days of farm work in my second year, because I already knew that I want to do the whole 3 years of work and travel. And that's what I did. And during that time, whenever I've worked for someone, they always asked me, can you see yourself living in Australia? And I always said, yes, I can, but I don't think I will. Because just the thought of moving to the other side of the world, like actually moving, was just blowing my mind. And it was so overwhelming to even let the thought into my head that I just pushed it away from me as far as I could. But I always liked the idea of moving to Australia. But liking the idea and actually doing it is two different things. So while I documented all of these things on my YouTube channel, I did not documented one thing, and that was that I not only fell in love with the country, I also fell in love with my now boyfriend. So now everything seemed to be a little bit more serious with moving to Australia, as you can probably imagine. Because for us, there was no way we would live in Germany, because I couldn't even imagine living back in Germany. So I cannot ask that of him. So the decision was basically straight away made. But it took me over a year to finally say, yes, I will do it, because it's a very scary thought. And, you know, to tell your friends and family you're moving to the other side of the world is not easy. And I thought choosing Australia is rejecting Germany. And it took me literally over a year to understand that that's not really what it is. Choosing Australia doesn't mean I reject Germany. It just means that I'm choosing the life that feels right to me and not whatever feels right to everyone else. And it's not exactly easy to migrate to Australia. So going down that path of a partner visa or whatever people are doing to migrate to Australia is a decision you want to be sure of, I would say. But for me, I knew I wanted to live here. I wanted to live here even before I met my boyfriend, and meeting him just made the decision pretty final, if that makes sense. But to get there in the first place took a long, long time. People often ask me, why Australia? Because of the nature that takes my breath away. The space you have, the outback, the rugged beauty of WA, the waterfalls and Cairns, the red sand that's everywhere inland, the people that make you feel like you can just be yourself and they welcome you in the country. This country makes me feel like I can just be myself. So why am I moving to Australia? Because I found a country that makes me feel alive and gives me the freedom that I need, and because I found love. And I know moving to Australia isn't always easy. It is a lot of visa stress, bureaucracy, missing birthdays, missing weddings, not seeing my nephews growing up, not seeing my friends and family all the time. And it's always a 24-hour plane ride away. But if the last 10 years taught me anything, it is that sometimes the life you meant to live is on the other side of the world. And for me, that is Australia.